One, and Coach will let the room start to populate here for just a couple seconds.
Okay.
So I want to welcome everybody to this our evening session here of day 2 for our Pro Coaches Basketball Summit. Layson Perkins here, and all this is kind of a collaboration between Basketball Immersion and Chris Oliver and Virtual Coaches Clinic. And we also want to thank Dr. Dish for their sponsorship of these sessions. And so tonight, very excited to have Mike Miller joining us. Coach Miller has worked at the college level. We're both products of the Southland Conference, having both coached in the Southland Conference in the past. And of course, Coach has worked with the Knicks organization, both with the G League team as well as with the Knicks. So really looking forward to having him talk to us tonight about offensive concepts and spacing. It's always one of those challenges, no matter what level we work with players, teaching spacing, teaching offensive concepts. So Coach, thank you so much for joining us, and really looking forward to hearing what you have for us.
Well, great. Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for allowing me to talk to the coaches and talk a little bit about some offense and hopefully get some conversation, some dialogue going. So, as Coach Perkins mentioned, I have spent some time. I've coached at different levels, and I feel like it has really been beneficial for me to be able to learn and to see the different things and experience a lot of different things. But as the longer that I have coached and the longer that I have done this, the more questions that I have, the more things that come up, and you really dig into it and you really want to know. So this is fun. A lot of times even as a presenter, we pick up some things that people ask the questions, make you think a little bit deeper. So my purpose tonight is really just to talk a little bit about the offensive concepts and how I have used these concepts to really teach our offense over the years, and then how that's evolved and changed a little bit, and just share some ideas with you. So the biggest thing that I would like to do, I would like to make this interactive. I want you to feel free at any point if you have a question, what we're talking about, something is not clear that I've mentioned, by all means, let's get right into the question. We don't have to wait. I would rather have it open dialogue where I feel like as we leave this meeting tonight, everyone's had a chance, to get something out of it, and and it's made them think. So, during this pandemic, probably as a lot of you have, I have been in my home a lot and have really taken advantage of these Zoom calls and had a chance to listen to people with their philosophies and systems of play and what they're doing, and have really spent a lot of time trying to grow in other areas. And I think over the course of time, when I started coaching, I've been coaching now, I'm going on 30 years. And when I started coaching, I didn't have anybody sit me down and say, you know what, the one thing you need to be prepared for are things are going to constantly change. But as we've gotten into the technology and we have analytics and we have all of this video footage and we have all these things that we can do, it has changed year by year. And it has constantly been something that we have to keep up with. And, not to mention, in the off season, one of the things I really like to do is study leaders and other coaches, whether it be NFL coaches or, last summer I was studying Joe Madden, who was with the Cubs. He's moved to the Angels, a baseball manager, and some of the things that he's done that have been, somewhat innovative. And I, thought there were things that crossed over from even baseball, into pro basketball. So, with that said, ready to kind of get started and talking about some offense a little bit. The biggest thing I think when we're getting ready, to talk about what we're going to do, there's a difference between an offensive philosophy and an offensive system, because that philosophy that you have may be altered as you go along. Your system could be different, but that philosophy, is going to stand and be really the basis of what you're trying to do and what your purpose is. And I think the biggest thing when we talk about offense is, are we being effective and are we being efficient? Not only in how we are playing, but how we're teaching it, and are we getting better? We have to have a way that this continues to grow and it continues to get better. So, as we talk about this, and I know we've got high school coaches, and I know that we've got college coaches and maybe some pro coaches out there, and we all have the same things that we're looking at. So, I think when you start looking at your offensive system and really evaluate it, so we can get into these concepts that I want to talk about, I think that, the first thing we have to take a look at what are the current trends, what's going on in basketball right now. And even when I was a college coach and was looking, and seeing what was happening, the NBA is out in front of that. And we're so lucky now that we have access to Euro League games and other things that we can watch and learn and put some wrinkles into. And again, just because, we have a philosophy offensively we're going to work off of, that doesn't mean that we're not making tweaks to our system where it makes it better based on personnel or other things. One thing I wanted to kind of bring up tonight, these are 5 things that over the course of time, have worked in the NBA G League for 6 years prior to being in the NBA. During that time, had a chance to coach with Team USA, in the FIBA qualifiers with Coach Jeff Van Gundy. So, we're seeing, different systems and styles of play. But 5 things I thought maybe we would mention tonight as we start talking about this. One, so much 5-out alignment with no low post and how that impacts different things, because that obviously has transitioned and changed. So, how you are able to be effective and efficient in a 5-out system, if that fits you, possibly. A lot of teams are going where, they have shooting bigs, it creates matchup problems and so forth. So, that's one thing. The second thing, playing against switches. This year in the NBA, we played against a lot of switches. A team that comes to mind right away that's really good at it is Houston, and how effective they were. And I think, we have maybe a conception sometimes that people that are switching a lot, they're not real physical, or they're soft switches. We played Houston this year, and anytime we tried to drop into the post off of those switches, Eric Gordon, James Harden, whoever it was, those guys were as physical as anybody, getting into the legs of the post guys and driving them out. They're hitting cutters. They're super aggressive, very effective with the switches. So as an offensive system, how are we going to attack those switches? Third thing, the offense right now, particularly we saw in the NBA, the players have gotten so good at drawing fouls. It's created a whole different dimension. It's creating for defenses now that have to really take a look at how they're closing out and what they're doing, because, it doesn't matter, in what era you played or you've coached or whatever, it's always been a rule, don't foul a jump shooter. And it's happening at a higher rate than I can remember. But the offensive players have gotten so good using their body and angles and creating fouls that, it has to be something that we look at putting into our offensive systems and using it. The fourth thing is, as we saw during the NBA playoffs this year, maybe more prevalent as high school and college, the zone, playing against more zone. I think the success that we saw Miami have playing their zone, moving through the playoffs, getting into the finals, they were very effective with it. So it makes one more thing now that all of us have to be better at, as we prepare our offensive attacks. Last thing in this current trend that I wanted to mention is, in the NBA, we've played the majority of what we play against in pick and roll now are deep drops. Deep. I mean, as we determine what it is, you're up to touch, or maybe you're going to impact that ball handler coming off, or is it a center field? We're seeing the deep drops with these guys back in the paint. And obviously that changes how we need to attack and the different things that we can do. So those were some things that I wanted to mention that I've seen at the NBA level that are really trending and are really a big part of the play. Let's think about offensively. What is it we're trying to do? We're trying to create an advantage, right? We want to create an advantage. We want to keep the advantage, and we want to use the advantage through a possession. So as we go through it, what is it that's going to create, an advantage for us? So a big part of this now, as we get into it, is what's your personnel look like, and what are you going to be able to do? Again, philosophically, we're looking at this, and we know what our purpose is, what we're trying to do. System-wise, it ties into what our philosophy is, but your system obviously is going to be dictated. What's your skill level? What's your personnel? How can you use your players to maximize what they do? How are you getting your best shots, your shots for your guys that shoot the ball the best? How are you creating driving situations from long closeouts to create that? How are you getting to the paint? How are you getting to the foul line? As we do that, I did want to share a couple of things with you. We were doing this about a week ago, got into this information, and it really, made me really stop and think about this and try to figure out our system of play. And this is what I want to share with you. Offensively in the NBA this year, on shots that were taken from the 24-second shot clock to 18. So from 24 to 18, teams averaged 1.26 points per possession and shot 53%. Obviously, we're talking about advantage breaks, early offense type stuff, early in the clock with attack. But that is the highest number on the board. 24 to 18, it's 1.26 points per possession, 52.9% field goal percentage. Okay, from 18 to 12 seconds on the shot clock, shot taken, 1.15 points per possession at 46.8 field goal percentage. Okay, from 12 to 6 seconds, it's 1.10 at 45% field goal percentage. So you can see where we're at with our numbers. And then when we get to the final 6 seconds of the shot clock, it's 0.95 points per possession at 37.9% field goal percentage. So as we're building our offense, how do we put ourselves in a position where we're getting good shots early in the shot clock? I've heard Coach Van Gundy say, on television many times in these 2-for-1 situations, don't get 2 bad shots out of it. We've got to make sure we're getting good shots. How many good shots can we get? Okay. So the next step, as we look at that, because again, everything is analytics driven now. How are you preparing? How are you playing with the most purpose? Point distribution. Free throws, 1.54 points per possession per 2 free throws. Again, free throws, 1.54 points per possession. Layups, 1.33 points per possession. 3-point field goals, 1.07 points per possession. Okay. Those are the 3 most efficient, highest point per possession ways to score. Some of you, you may already know that. Point being, what are we doing to create our offense where we're putting ourselves in those situations where we're conscious of that? I know we get to the end of the game, we're going to look at the score sheet and see what we did. But, what are we doing that gets us fouled? Our guys that can really drive it, guys that make free throws, how do we get fouled? How are we getting to the rim? It's not put your head down, drive it in. What are we doing? Third thing, obviously, with the 3-point shots, how are we getting open threes in rhythm? Okay. With that said, what I'd like to do is just, give you a couple of examples of offensive philosophy material. And these are some things that I think are important and I've included, and I would say this is my philosophy. We had a conversation with some coaches about a month ago, and they said, every coach should have his overall philosophy of what the team is going to be about, and an offensive and a defensive philosophy all the time. And again, as you learn, as you evolve, you might tweak that a little bit, but there are things that you believe in and things, that you're going to try to really get better at and work on. So a few ideas here. Offensive philosophy. I've got 7 things that I'm going to touch. Number 1 is the point distribution emphasis. Just what we talked about. We want to get to the free throw line. We want to get layups and points in the paint. And we want open spot up threes. Preferably, we really like those corner threes. That's the first thing that we want to make sure our offense is giving us those opportunities. Second thing, we want space, we want pace, and we want movement with our offense. So with that said, we talk about spacing. That's going to be a big piece of what we're talking about tonight. Spacing is just, to me, is just like an assist, more important than an assist, because the pass won't happen unless you have great spacing. Spacing is an unselfish act. Spacing starts in transition and it goes all the way through the possession, and it's always changing. What is spacing? If I'm playing off the ball, and a lot of you coaches probably remember Tex Winter, and Tex Winter was a phenomenal, maybe one of the greatest offensive minds that we've seen in basketball, and he's left his mark certainly. But one of the things he used to talk about, he had his principles of offense, and he would say, if all things are equal and there's 5 guys out there, that means you're going to play without the ball 80% of the time. You start thinking about that, how you're spaced. Part of spacing is, if you're in the right space and correctly spaced, the ball should be able to see you. One of the old things that we started when we started teaching a long time ago was spacing should be 15 to 18 feet minimum. And if you're going to be off, let's make it a little bit farther, really to open that floor up and create more room for people to play and for more actions. But spacing is continuous, and it's one of the most important concepts, that we have, and something we're going to come back to and talk some more about that. Second thing, out of space, pace, and movement, is we want to play with a lot of pace. I just talked about, with if we know that from 24 seconds to 18 seconds on the shot clock, that is the highest point per possession thing we can do, we need to make sure that we're playing with some pace, we're getting that ball down the floor, we're creating opportunities for that to happen. Certainly it could be off your defense, it can be off your stop and score stuff. And just as we watched the Lakers do during the NBA playoffs, how fast they are converting from their defense to offense, getting down the floor, finding good shots and finishing good shots. Our transition, our entries into whatever sets that we're running, our cuts, all of those things create a flow. And we want that flow to have great pace, because if it has pace, then it's going to have force. One thing we put on our whiteboard every game that we played this year with the Knicks is play with force. And then we would put examples of what playing with force means. And that's a big thing. Right behind that is the ball movement with a purpose. We want to play with a 2 count. That means when that ball comes to you, you have 1,001, 1,002. It's got to be shot, pass, or drive. Something has to happen where that ball is not sticking. There's nothing that frustrates players more, or coaches, as seeing that ball stick and stop. We want purpose with that ball movement, play off the 2 count, get it moving. As I said earlier, we're trying to, create an advantage, keep an advantage, and use the advantage. So if that ball sticks, we're losing that piece. And then obviously what we want out of this movement is we want uncontested shots in rhythm. When I was coaching for the Spurs in the D League, that was one of the things that we really kept track of, was uncontested shots. Who is getting the most uncontested shots? Obviously, on the other end, we're trying to make sure we do a good job. But that was a huge point that we made, is the team. That was one of the stats that we kept. The team that gets the most uncontested shots, it's a big advantage. Okay. The third piece that I want to talk about is the fundamental aspect. We are all player development coaches. I haven't coached in college for going on 9 years now. So I've been out of the college game for a while, but I would assume that things are trending at the college level the same way and at the high school level the same way, that coaches now are specialists like everything else. This guy is a shooting coach. This guy's an offensive coach. This guy works with the big man. One thing that's for certain that I know this is we are all player development coaches. We are all making players better. And how we are able to teach the fundamentals is the key to any offensive system or anything offensively you're going to do. To me, it's the key concept in this thing, because we have to have the fundamentals. With that said, really believe in a specificity when we're teaching, and the drill work, the shooting drills, everything we do, it's for a reason and it fits. So any shots, we break down, the point guards are going to get shots that the point guards get out of our offense. The wings, they're going to get shots they get out of our offense. That's where we're going to spend all of our time, right down the line. The shooting, what I talked about earlier, if we know that free throws and layups are at the top of the spectrum in terms of how we are able to efficiently score points, then we have to be able to finish plays. We all want to be able to protect our paint, try to keep that ball out where we're not getting in foul trouble or we're giving up shots at the basket, which are creating second shots possibly. So, how are we getting to the rim? But the big piece of this is we need to be able to finish. This year, no matter what our breakdown work was going to be with the Knicks, if we were going to go out and do an individual workout with a guy, he's going to start and finish. He's going to finish through contact. He's going to finish with footwork. We would talk about the skill finishes, and depending by position, what kind of shots they get. But that shooting has to start at the rim. If we're going to emphasize that, and we know the numbers tell us that those are the shots, we have to start with that, then we've got to be able to finish. And we have to work on it every day, finishing through contact, right, left, off, which foot, whether it be, what we call outside for a right-handed layup. I'm going off my right foot with my right hand to protect the ball. Whatever that is, whatever we have to do, we need to be prepared to make those shots. Footwork is the foundation of the game. And we need to make sure as we're teaching the game that that's a big part of it, that players understand that. The game will get easier as players' footwork gets better. And we're going to be able to do more things as that happens. I really believe that. And then, we've talked about the shooting, the footwork, and so forth, the passing principles, being able to pass and catch. We talked about this for a lot when I was a college coach, and we talked about, the concepts of, not everybody maybe is going to be a great shooter. We have different roles that we have on our team. But the one thing that we found, it's more difficult to hide a poor passer than it is a poor shooter, because the passing comes into play. And so pass catch execution is, and the specificity with it, the types of passes that we want to throw is big. All right. The fourth thing, philosophically, then, we want to touch the paint. We actually counted this year with our point guards in transition, their percentages touching the paint. We really wanted them playing with a downhill force and be able to touch that paint with the ball. Now, as we talk about that, we want to penetrate the defense. So it starts with that downhill and transition with our point guards of playing with that force, with that pace. But it's also about cuts. Cutting is such a big part of our offenses, particularly as we're spreading things out, playing more 5 out, more 4 out. We need to cut effectively and efficiently through the defense. And that's a huge thing, cutting with pace and with force and touching the paint with those cuts. Our rolls, hard rolls, when we get with our bigs coming out of those ball screens with their action and getting downhill. We want to create kick out threes. Again, we talked about these numbers that I covered with you. we want those kick out threes, getting downhill and that ball movement early and creating those situations. We need transition points. How do we get transition points? Advancing the ball. Again, I'll bring up the Lakers. This year, they were so fast, they were so aggressive, they were so good defensively, swarming, and then how fast they were able to get that thing out. And they're not bouncing that ball a lot in the backcourt. And I think that's another concept that we're talking about. We want to advance the ball from the backcourt and not dribble it out of the backcourt. It's so much harder to defend, so much harder to prepare for. Whether we're playing against trap, zone, doesn't matter. We still have to touch the paint and play with that downhill force. Okay, we make a second side emphasis with the offense, and with that, we want to catch the ball on the move. We don't want to catch it stationary. We want to get out and go. So if we're talking about offensively, we're going to play without the ball 80% of the time if all things are equal. We know they're not. The point guard's going to touch it more, but in theory, 80% of the time. Okay, so we talked about the spacing. If I'm spaced properly, the ball should be able to see me. There should be a clear path where the ball can get to me if I'm spaced properly. The second thing is this was a Coach Winter principle that he used, is you need to split your vision. So I need to know, as I get set up as a college coach, we emphasize this over and over till the guys were sick of it, but have the knees bent, have the hands up, and split your vision. Split your vision to know where the ball is so that the ball can see me. Second thing is, how am I guarded? Where is my man at? Part of that principle is the defense names the play. If you are looking and you're paying attention and you split your vision off the ball, the defense will name the play. They will tell you what you should do, and we want to take advantage of it. Okay, moving forward, some of the concepts in this philosophy that we really want to do a good job teaching. Driving kick game. Okay, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but doesn't matter what your system is. You're going to come out, and with your system of play, you're going to have your transition attack. Then you're going to have, when the defense is set and we're in a stop and score situation, secondary offense, maybe some people call, we're going to have our set plays and our offense that we want to play out of. And then what happens after all of those things? When we've talked about the numbers and how the percentages go against you as you get deeper into the clock, where that defense is really set and is in a position where it makes it tough. So the driving kick game is big, being able, again, playing off a 2-count, catch, drive, kick, catch the ball on the move. That was one of the things working in the Spurs system. And Manu Ginobili was playing for the Spurs at that time, and having a chance to watch him, over extended periods of time, and how good he was off the ball, never caught the ball standing still. He was always on the move and getting downhill, and he was so difficult to guard. Another concept that we teach every day is 3-man spacing or pick and roll spacing. Example being, we're going old school. I've got the board here, but in 3-man spacing, let's say our pick and roll situation is this. You guys see this? So our screener is here, we're here. 3-man spacing that I'm talking about is over here. So here's our action. If you guys can see that, somebody let me know if you can't. But
we can, Coach. We can see it.
Okay, but here's our action. So when I talk about 3-man spacing, this is what I'm talking about. So again, this gets us maybe out of our primary action, but it could be, honestly, we find ourselves in these 3-man spacing situations a lot when he's coming down the floor and we get to this sideline drag in that situation. So we're in our 3-man spacing. But, in the NBA, on a missed shot, there's a very high percentage of time that we are coming down the floor, and a drag or a sideline drag or 77 double drag is going to be, one of the things that we go to, one of the things that we do. So, you find this 3-man spacing a lot. And what happens? Okay, if it's a college game, when I was a college coach, I would tell those defenders, I want you to paint that midline. I want you stacked in there. So now, we start looking at what we can do off of these actions. And this is one of the concepts that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. And, while we're on it, we'll just kind of go through the different things that we can do when we get in this three-man spacing. Now, I'm not sure what you're playing against the most, but as we're coming down the floor, again, very important. We want this point guard coming from the back court with force, playing with pace, making this defender guard him as he's coming down the floor. So he's not worried about that screen. He has to actually stop the ball physically. We're lined up over here. Doesn't really matter position-wise right now. I know a lot of teams are playing with, this type of alignment where, there's no post. It may be it's a shooting big out here, whatever the situation might be. But let's say as we had that, he's coming in from the backcourt. So our big got the rebound and we have beat him down the floor is what we're looking at. So now as that ball is coming, we like to break the free throw line. If it's there, if not, we can change the angles. And the best thing about it with these screens, he can set, at any angle he needs to create an advantage to get downhill for this guy. All right. Well, let's say now that in the NBA, the majority of the time, this play is going to be an ice or a down, which means, the big, he's going to drop. I talked to you earlier about these deep drops. That's the X5 down here. And then that means defensive coverage now. Our point guard is going to jump in here and actually get above and force that ball down. So the call frequently is either, is ice or down. With this alignment, so now the ball is moving this direction. So this is one of our concepts. Ball is being dribbled on the baseline, three-man spacing. What are we looking for? Okay. So what's happened on that probably is this defender is probably going to be somewhere in this area. This guy's responsible, even though they're in a deep drop, he's going to be in just in case he needs him to rotate, depending on what the coverages are. Could be different. And the one thing I want to say, that I should have said in the beginning, there's a lot of different ways to do things. And just because I'm showing you something doesn't mean it's the best way. There's a lot of ways to look at it and a lot of system of play. But with this, we always, again, we want the ball to be able to see us. So we want to hold this corner spot. That's a big spot as we're playing against this. And we want to be able to utilize it. So we want that corner filled and we want that action. Okay. So as he's coming off of it, let's say the big is a roller. And as he's starting to roll, we're looking here. Can we get some type of cutting action, coming off of this from here? The other thing that, if he's a roller, we can pull this guy back behind it. Okay. That's one scenario that we can play through. I want to show you a couple others while we're talking about it. One thing you've probably seen Boston play really good at it in the same type of situation as we have our three-man spacing or pick and roll spacing, as we're coming over to set it and we're driving it and he's our roller of this cutter coming down and trying to pin in the help. Houston does it. Really difficult to defend. In the G League, Toronto's team, coached by Jerry Stackhouse, did this and hit several threes. It was a tough, we're down there thinking we're in coverage and we're getting screened in. That's a nice action to add to it. And then, obviously another action, if you like, you could cut the corner guy. Anytime you don't have a corner and that ball is dribbled down, we certainly want to fill that spot to make sure that we fill. So, there's a lot of different things you can do, just giving you a few ideas of stuff to look at. But, one of our areas this year that we looked at, we talked about constantly and used on the film, was what we were doing out of three-man spacing and what those situations would be. We really like throw and goes, throw and goes. because if we're playing against deep drops, they're in pick and roll coverage, and we throw the ball and chase it. So throw and goes, something we work on every day in practice. Again, let's say it's a drag scenario coming down and the 5 is trailing it, and he's coming over and they've already called ice and he's dropped into it. His job is to push it down. This defender's already all the way down and we're in 3-man spacing over here. As he comes off of it, he comes down, he's got him in coverage to throw it back to this guy and then come and get it, which allows him now to get back over the top of this in this deep drop and to create something with this other side. At point, we're probably looking at some type of, slot cut here, depending on spacing. It might be, a slot cut from here. It's going to depend on, how you're being defended, where these people are at. And again, seeing the defense names the play, but really like those throw and goes. We're seeing a lot of these deep drops. How do we attack it? How do we take advantage of it? Throw and go, has been a good thing. What are you doing when you're throwing the ball to the post? So that's a concept that we work on, every other day. We had a team that had post up guys. You look around, if your high school team, your college team, the Lakers had post up guys. You go through it and you play off those post players. So as we're playing off those posts, we want to be able to have our routes down and know what we're trying to do with it. So we need to go through those routes. And when I was talking about shooting specificity, these are the types of things that we create our shooting drills with these concepts, so we know what it is we're trying to do. So, with our post-ups, what are we going to do? Not a lot of overloads. Obviously, there's not enough room when we're filling the corners. So we get into a lot of this potentially with our alignment with the ball right here. So when the ball goes in, what are we doing? If this is the big and we talk about spacing, then, we're going to make this cut. We want to make a hard cut to get it back. As he's clearing, then we're going to dive this guy down as well, and then as we're filling, again, we used to call this with the Spurs, the longitudinal line, that we don't want to cross that line unless we have to be an outlet, again, where the ball can see you, but give that post player a chance to play and make the defender, if I'm here, he has the ball here now, and we've created space on this side. If this defender has to commit, now obviously we have actions that we want to play out of. Okay. So, what are our post routes going to be? A couple other things, Golden State is so effective running what I would call like a split cut. So, the action being here, post player, as we talked about, ball goes in and we're coming and screening. You're playing against a switching team. Great opportunity to slip out of that cut and get to the basket. Then we can fill. We can do it at the other angle. If this is a big and this is a shooter, let's say that's the 2 and he's past it, that we set that flare coming back off of it. It's a tough angle coming off of it. So there's a lot of different things, that we can do with it. One thing I saw Orlando do, which is what a lot of people in the NBA also are doing with out of bounds plays. Let's say, whoever, personnel, again, it can be interchangeable, but we make that pass to the post and we get into this, we're going to come across, to set these screens and play off of that game. You play these little cutting games where, he might slip through that one and then, he may come off of it and come back, but they're playing that little cutting game off the top based on, the spacing and angles to the basket. But I have seen teams have ran, those actions off of it as well. Concepts playing off of switches. We have to practice playing against switches every day to be prepared for it. baseline drives. I talked about a little bit of what we are going to do on baseline drives. I talked early, the terminology. We want to make sure on baseline drives, even if this guy's up here and he's driving the ball down, we have to drift. On baseline drive, we have to baseline drift to be there for that pass. Okay. If we have a low post at this time, let's say, there's a guy here and he's in what we would call the dunker spot. If you make sure you can see it, and that ball's driving baseline, his job is to get to the dots to either free it up for that pass or that pass. And that, again, we're talking about specifics. Again, that is one of our shooting drills that we work on. The other thing that I really like is, depending on where this guy is spaced, let's say we're here already and we get to our, whatever the situation, maybe it's pick and roll, it ends up being a baseline drive. He's rolling. This pull behind is really difficult because everybody's sinking. If we start looking at what the coverages are with this, the low man, this guy has to come across and take roller. And again, if they're in a deep drop, maybe he doesn't have to help as much, and that's the purpose, obviously, of the deep drops. But as we play through it now and we know the rotations, there's nobody covering this guy coming back behind the ball. He gets lost a lot. You've got a shooter up top that's really a great place on these actions going baseline, is coming back behind the ball. Again, with one of the first things we talked about when I started was the ball being able to see you if you're spaced and you have to be a receiver. Screening, obviously, and then middle drives and where our cuts go. And those are the concepts. And I'm going to touch on a few more as we go into it, but just wanted to do it. Your concepts may be completely different in how you want to play, where you think your team is, and what you need to do. When we went to our sets this year, it was a little bit different. I started the year as an assistant coach, and then 20 games into it, I was coaching the team. And so during that time, we didn't have a lot of time to practice. We had a West Coast trip coming up that we went through. I think it was Portland and Golden State and Denver, and I mean we're hitting the West Coast, and every game obviously is very difficult to prepare for and to play in. One of the things that we went to, we said we want to try to simplify as we go into it, because we felt like our guys are going to be a lot more comfortable in simplicity and allow them, to kind of find a groove and to play in the situation that we were in. So we went to it and we said, okay, we're going to have a core 4 set of plays. And those were the plays on game days that we scripted the most, that we knew, because on a made basket, the point guard knew we're in one of these 4 sets. Now there's multiple actions to the set, but he would call one of those 4 core plays, which I think helped our pace. I think it helped us play with more force. And I think it gave, just the simplicity of it. It helped the guys. They knew this is what we were going to be in. And then as it turned out, probably with most teams, that, our starting guard had a preference to maybe 2 or 3 of the plays. Our guy that ran the second unit, he may have used one of the plays that the first guard didn't use. So we were hitting all of our sets, but we felt like they fit our players. And, again, anything that we had, it had to be, very specific why we were doing it, what we were expecting to get out of it. And then we paid attention to see, are we getting what we think we should be getting through the analytics, through, after each game, watching the films and seeing the numbers and seeing what we were trying to get. I thought it was really important too, is to have a terminology, and everything had a name, not only the sets, but as I was talking to you earlier about, some of them are universal terms that everybody uses. If it's going to be a double drag, it's 77. If it's coming down the floor. If it's a drag, he can hit his hip to let the guy know and give him a visual that he's coming in and he's going to offer him a drag. But everything had a name. And in the terminology, we did the terminology on booklets to make sure that it was really easy for guys that like to look at things that way. And then we also made a video playbook that would have the terminology and that would also have all of the sets where they could actually watch the plays and they could study it that way. Before the games, we spent more time with our stuff. We would put those core four on the board to make sure everybody was comfortable. We could visualize, then we knew whoever we were playing, how they were going to play us. You play Orlando. Orlando is a great defensive team. They're going to keep you on a side. You're going to have to be real specific how you attack their defense out of what you do and with your concepts. Last thing, the seventh thing in the philosophy is really see the importance being efficient and effective. Again, same word, with our ATOs, with our base out of bounds, and with our side out of bounds. Not to mention, again, I didn't mention end of game stuff. Obviously, that's a category of its own, but the players are going to recognize the confidence coming from those players. I've coached a long time and I've talked about this, and I believe this is we can't just make players confident. Now, we can do things to help, and we need to. That's part of our job and how we help them play, at their best level. But when you're creating good shots with these situations, your best shooter is getting good looks coming out of these ATOs, base OB, side OB, anything that you have a chance to put out there, that's big. Those players know, and they're going to trust in you to find that. It's a great way, to not only, find ways to create points, but also to, be in a situation where those guys are confident with that. And winning the specialty areas, how many opportunities do you get to do those things? Because this game is moving and we're teaching the game as it's moving. So when we have an opportunity to win an area, that's an area to really lock into. So those are some of the philosophy, a little bit of the spacing. Do we want to take a second maybe and have a couple questions here?
Yeah, Coach, we've got some, we do have some questions here. So one of the first questions, I think maybe you talked about this a little bit, but what are some examples of playing with force?
Playing with force, it starts really coming out of the backcourt. You're playing with force. So let's use an example. If you're, and again, we'll use terms. Can you guys see the board okay? Is that okay?
Yes.
So if I'm one of these wing or a lane runner, if you give it a label, I'm sprinting with force to get there because I'm getting there. That might be a shot, but I have to open the floor up because potentially we may have a rim runner. We may not. The rim runner may rebound, but let's say that we do have one and he's blasting down that floor. He's attacking that rim with force where the ball can come over the top. We're driving this thing with force down the floor. There is force with it. If, we are in a situation and we brought the ball up and let's say the 5 is trailing, he comes into it and screens. We are working with this guy blasting out of there with force. So it's cuts, it's rolls, it's drives. Now, we're going to emphasize drives. This is true at every level, particularly I've coached at the college level too. And we coached our defense at the college level to really protect that paint and be in there because you can. Obviously at the NBA level, you have to clear the lane. But what we really emphasize is this guy. And if the ball handler is here and this guy, his defender is here, and I attack and I can freeze this guy just enough, on that kick, our drives on the second side are extreme force because now that might create that drive pitch and creates that next wave. But that's what we're talking about with force. If we're running cuts, it's at full blast. So a big piece of it is, we do 5-on-0 We did 5-on-0 this year with our team with the Knicks, just as much or more than I ever did it as a college coach. We do a lot of it. And, I'm going to talk after we go through this about some of the buildup things that we do to get to this point. But I hope that's a good definition of playing with force.
Next question was, you talked about three-man spacing. Now, do you have a particular preference that you like, or is it personnel based, a shooter versus a non-shooter?
Well, it can be. It certainly can be. But I think a lot of it starts with how the defense plays. Because when we get to our three-man spacing, and I tell you, this is one of the things that that I've done a lot of, is after every game I was clipping our spacing to look at it, to try to see just what you've asked, what fits us the best, how are we utilizing it, what are we doing? We have to move this backside around. Obviously, we're trying to create an advantage and be able to play. We're trying to play in a rhythm. So it's constantly moving and adjusting with our space. So whatever the situation is, we ran a lot of pistol. Okay. So to answer your question, which guy would we want to cut? Well, when we ran the pistol, I'm sure, everybody understands kind of what we're talking about with our pistol. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Let me back this guy up. So everybody see, I'm coming down the court. This is your normal pistol alignment. He's coming up. He's going to catch the ball, top of the key extended. We're going to make this pass 15, 18 feet as soon as he opens up. Well, he's coming behind it, right? Everybody recognizes the action now. So he comes off of it. Let's say he gives it back to him. He hands it back. That's an option. If his defender goes 2 men removed and goes under, I can give it back to him. I give it back to him. Here comes the flare. So this guy is flaring up top. The reason I'm showing you this, we run a lot of pistol. A lot of the NBA teams, you saw the Lakers, you saw Miami, you see a lot of teams are running pistol action, okay? Well, when we just did what I drew up, this guy, the 2 that came off the flare, because as 5 set his flare, he's going to set a second string. So he's going to space to get to three-man spacing. He may not be all the way set. So as he's driving, this guy is open a lot. He's open because this guy's coming across to help. His man is dropping. This guy is still going with the cutter. So it's kind of a coverage thing. Again, if we're playing a lot against a lot of deep drops, the teams, they have the rim protectors. We had Mitchell Robinson this year. We want him in a deep drop. He's a great shot blocker. The Nets had DeAndre Jordan and Jared Allen, and those guys were in super drops. You saw in the Denver would play deep drops as well. So the deep drops are made to try to take away some of that action that I'm talking about, but it still can get in. But there's any number of things that you can do, but it's important that it's part of your concepts. So the big thing is be in a position where the ball can see you and see the defense. I got to split my vision where I can see the ball and I see how I'm guarded. As soon as my man turns his head, obviously we all teach the same thing. I'm going to cut behind his head if I can. But that cut, I think you're very familiar. If you've been watching NBA basketball, you've seen it. Well, let's look at one more type. Let's say we're college, okay? And you're playing against my college team and I've got my guys are in there. And we're coming off of this drive again, okay? And he's spacing and maybe he didn't get all the way to spacing and he's more here. This has been the 4 and that's been the 2. So now when he's driving and he has to go and he's dropping, really like this action, as I showed you earlier that Houston does, instead of him making the slot cut, he comes in and sets that little in screen on the outside that Houston takes advantage of, and they're throwing it, shooting that corner 3. Again, it's part of our concepts. How many corner 3s can we get on a paint touch and kick out? But that's just another way, that you can get to that. And again, you're countering the coverage and how they're playing. we get in situations, with our spacing as we talk about it. If we get in situations where there's nowhere to cut, we've told our guys that we're in a hole. You can't cut if there is nowhere to cut, obviously. Let's say the timing, because things aren't always going to be perfect. As he's coming over and we're going downhill and the timing's off, and I'm this guy out here, he's already in there. Obviously, I can't cut on top of him. So we have to recognize, what's in front of us and what we have. But it starts with how I'm being played, and then absolutely personnel. What do I do? How do I get my shooters a good look?
One more question I'd ask on that. So on the 3-man side, if let's say you're running let's say it's maybe a 1-4 pick and roll, and this is going to be a pick and pop. Would you manipulate the 3-man side in order to make sure that the defender that X's out to the shooter is either a bigger player or possibly a smaller player? How would you? What is your strategy there?
So if I understand it, we're coming either way. It can come this way. He can drive it and pop, right, or go the other way. But basically, he's going to catch it in the slot area.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got to take away the help, right? So it's this guy as we come off of this, and a lot of teams are doing that for that reason. When it's a pick and pop, it can be the 4, it can be a shooting 5. It's the same thing. But as we get into that now, and he's coming off of it and driving it, and he's popping, on the flight, this guy's man is going to be, he's going to have to stunt, right? I mean, he's in a position where he's going to have to stay. As soon as this guy just even shows at him, he's cutting behind his head. We're looking at that. And so, yeah, we definitely would cut whoever the helper is. So as we talk about it, we might as well, take a look at this too. What about our situations when maybe our floor is balanced, right? Because we're in that a lot too. 3-man spacing we see a lot of, but we see this a lot too. So we see this action with him coming off, and we have the same options that we can play off of. So it might be, a scenario. Let's say this is a shooting big, okay? So as he comes off of it and he screens and he pops, well, he's got to stay down, right? That's what we're doing on the backside, because if I'm coming across, I'm trying to clear the lane and give space, and then I'm looking to throw back. But when I do that, he can't lift on that one because he's already there. Everybody sees that, okay? Well, now, again, we know personnel. When we played this year with Mitchell Robinson, and we came into these situations, which we get into a lot, okay? And he comes off of it, we know he's rolling, looking for the lob. And we know if he gets behind him, this guy has to help. So he's going to lift out of that corner. So when I'm coming off, I'm looking here or I'm looking back based on what that low man did. His man is the guy that I'm going to keep. But again, the ball has to see him. He has to relocate. Spacing goes throughout the whole possession. It never stops. And you constantly are adjusting and moving, whether it be as simple as that lift, or if I'm here and somebody drives here, then I'm sliding. I have to get away from the ball. If I'm going this way, I've got to get away, or I've got to pull to the ball, are the spacing rules that we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So Coach, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Do we have some more questions?
That's it for the moment.
Okay. Well, let's hit a couple more things here. Well, let me ask this real quick. I was going to go over, a couple of build-up type things of getting into, with the concepts and spacing and offense, or is there something that someone had that they really wanted to cover today?
Real quickly, if there's anything specifically like Coach to talk about, go ahead and type in the question and answer box. I know personally, one question I would have is, we're seeing a lot more you're talking about post action earlier. We're seeing a lot more uphill dribble handoffs out of the post. What are your thoughts there on that? And what are maybe some teaching points on that?
Offensively or defensively? What
offensively.
Offensively, okay. Well, I think they're difficult to guard, particularly anything that we can get the ball handler going downhill. We feel like is advantage. Again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get to the rim, get layups, get fouled, or shoot or kick out threes. Ideally, that creates the advantage. I think biggest thing is in a dribble handoff is it has to have. I'll use the word pace, force. It's got to have uphill. Doesn't matter. It's got to be hitting because the speed, the force, the cutters, it creates confusion, it creates advantage. So the other thing is let's dribble at the low side of the defender where it's going to be difficult for him, where we're making him go downhill. All right. So if I dribble uphill, I want to go at the backside of the defensive player. Any dribble handoff has to go at a defender. I'm not trying to take a dribble handoff to an offensive player. I'm going at the defender, particularly uphill. It's going to be tougher for him to get it. Now, as I make my play, a lot of it too, as I'm really working on these exchanges. Can't really be a handoff. He can't handle it. It's going to be difficult to take it out of my hands and get the ball on the ground with pressure. So I'm going to drive it uphill at the defender at his low side and seal him. Pop your feet, stop, don't keep moving. It's going to be an illegal screen. And we see that. We see that a lot. So a Tex Winter term, pop your feet. Take it to the point of contact, pop your feet and hold. Now, if you force a switch, or in the NBA in that situation would be a late peel, where we're going to peel, which is a late switch. I have that guy on my back now. I brought it uphill on the dribble handoff. I pitch it. He takes it. I've sealed. My man now is guarding a downhill drive. I'm rolling with the guard on my back, creating advantage. So now he's got a layup. I've got a layup. He hits me, layup. Somebody's in front. Then I'm looking to spray out opposite. Again, great way to break that down in a 3-on-0 concept type drill.
Perfect. We're getting a lot of requests for drills to teach drive and kick, as well as the drills that you use to teach and kind of emphasize the 2 count.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that's where we were going. So that's good. Okay. Here, I want to show you this because I actually got this from somebody else a couple of years ago when we were playing. People were switching these pick and rolls, and the balance of when you're playing against these drags, offensive package coming down the floor on a missed shot. The reality is you're seeing, this, whatever the angle would be. I'm trying to get to the low side of that defender, right? And he's playing with force, going to get him in that screen. But even so, coming off of that, we're seeing a lot of switches. So as we went through it, we would get bogged down at times. Maybe we had the advantage. A couple years ago in the G League, I had Luke Cornett that had played at Vanderbilt, 7-foot shooter that's now with the Bulls, and Isaiah Hicks. I had that tandem of 2 actual big guys. So we were playing off of those guys, but we found ourselves trying to take advantage of that mismatch, and it bogged us down a little bit, and they just helped, and it kind of took us away from what we were doing. So we started doing this. We did this 2-on-0 drill every day, and I would line the guards up. This would be a line of guards, and this would be a line of forwards or bigs. We just call the guys forwards. So the drill is these guys have a ball, and it's 2-on-0, but we would add some coaches out here for this guy. I would have a coach kind of soft here, but I would push that thing ahead, make the coach guard, and then he's working on coming in, screening the low side of the coach. And now he's coming off here. He's got the coach on his back. He rolls off, coach is out, and he's working on throwing pocket passes. You throw these pocket point guards, they're going to be involved in these. They have to be able to throw these pocket passes. So this was our drill. So it taught the pace, the force, 2 guys working together, okay? And he's coming up, so he's defended. He's coming in with a purpose, and we teach, like all the NBA teams, when that guy's coming in to screen, he's got his arms, I don't know if you can see me, but he's got his arms in. They're not extended, they're in. And he's touching those hips of that defender and kind of popping him back a little bit, and then he's rolling out of there. I don't know if you can get away with it. At the NBA, I mean, they'll knock the hell out of those guys sometimes with their hands, and there's, and they're able to get away with that some. But the key again is you can't extend your arms out, but that's a drill we do every day. Now, we go right side, we go left side, and we're throwing pocket passes. We make every guard go through the lineup, throw pocket passes. We make every forward work on setting his angle at the right screen. Some guys are threes, but they might play four in a late game. We throw them in that line at times as well to make sure they can do it. But here was the piece that has helped us the most. Same drill. So once we've gone through and he's thrown the pocket pass twice, we go to the other side, we throw the pocket pass with our left hand twice. Now it's a switch. So as he's bringing it with force, and again, I've got my coach in here. I got the wrong angle. We don't want him going to the corner. We want that ball coming where it's a threat and has force. Now it's a switch. He knows it's a switch. As he's coming under now, he is getting underneath that defender, if you can see that. As an offensive ball handler, I'm setting this thing up. As soon as he gets below the defender, he's turning and running. We call that our run roll. He's going to run roll out of that. And again, I got that from somebody else, and it's been very effective. He drives it immediately. We've got another guy down here, and we're throwing the lob to him now. So we've incorporated, for us in these drag situations, we're in 20 to 30 of these every game on average. So now we are working on a big piece of what we're doing with the screen, the detail of it, the pocket passes, but now against the switch. We would get in the middle of games sometimes and say, hey, let's run roll. Just run roll, run right. And those guys knew exactly what it was. We're looking at the lob. He's bringing it with force, and we're throwing that ball up. We do that with both sides. We do that drill every day, every day. With our guards in breakdown, the most basic way, coach is right there. He's got a ball, and put these guys anywhere you want to put them. I'm just going to put 1 and 2. Put them like that. Coach throws the ball on a bounce. He comes over and gets it. He has to get where he can see him with the ball. Ball's driven this way. He's got to slide, catch shot. If where we did before, where we threw the ball out to this guy and he had the lift so the ball can see him, we have floor balance and we're spaced. Let's say he goes that way. He's got to pull behind. He's going to pull back. We want that offense to be able to take 2 hard dribbles, and then whatever it is it a hook pass? Is it, whatever pass you're going to emphasize, that's what it is. And we get a shot. That's just basic two-man spacing drill. Ball's being dribbled at you, you got to slide space. Ball's being dribbled away, you pull to the ball. Very basic. Ball can see you. Working on splitting vision, making sure passes are coming in. We're getting shots that we feel like we're going to get during the game. Okay, let's keep building up. Let's go 3. Let's add 3 guys now. In training camp, this has been a staple of what we would do every day. Let's do it with the defense. Just we're running out of time. I want to share it with you. Coach, take the ball out of bounds right there. Okay, that's a C. If you guys can't see, it's not very good. Put 3 defenders in here. They have to be both feet inside the paint. And now let's take 3 offensive players outside the 3-point line. Okay? The coach now is going to throw the ball to anybody. So let's say he throws it here. Well, they have to get matched. We're in a drive and kick game. We're trying to drive gaps right now. We're trying to drive gaps. We're trying to touch the paint, and we're going to drive and kick till we get a shot. Let's say we can do it. We did this as a breakdown. So we might be having action going at 3 different baskets, but we're working on this 3-on-3 long closeout driving kick and trying to get into our situations now where it's driving kick. Okay. Gonna add, I know we're running out of time. Let me show you a couple more things. This drill we've done every day for the last 3 years, every single day. We line up, point guards are in this line, a big, or they're in this line. And now we've got a guard line and a wing line. So you just split your team, put them in these positions. This is our 4-on-0 driving kick, okay? We start it just like we would in a game. He's coming this way hard. We tell him, we want you coming out of these corners. He's coming in out of these corners. He's going to take it. We're going right off the handoff into a dribble pitch, okay? As he does that, the point guard who gave it up goes down here. So we're in a 4-out right now, which again, we find ourselves in. I'm going to change so you can see what we're doing. So now the 4 came off and gave it to the 2. He's spaced the ball. The 1 went down. So we've got the 3. So we're in a 4-out alignment. They have to touch the paint with the ball 3 times and make a 3 at the end of it. The drill's not over until we've made, start your number, 3 threes, 4 threes, 5 threes. So as he comes off that handoff now, he's driving it. He's got a space. Ball comes out. He keeps going. He drives it. We have to re-space, rebalance, and touch the paint again. You can manipulate the drill, saying, you got to get three dribble handoffs and 3 paint touches. But the whole thing is the force with the dribble coming off of it. But again, and it would say, okay, guys, we're going to do this drill till we make 3 threes. Well, if we do it 3 times and make 3 threes, we're moving on to the next thing. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. One last thing. Have I got a minute here to?
I'll give you a minute, Coach. We got a minute.
All right. Here's something I really like. And I saw this in the preseason. Let's say they're in teams. I've got team A. There's 4 of them. Okay. Team B's on defense. Okay. Team C is waiting down here. It's a cutthroat, full court game. This is a preseason. We would put 14 seconds on a shot clock, and there are no ball screens. There are no screens at all. This is a drive and kick game. So we put 14 on the clock. The reason we play it in the cutthroat, you drive, kick, it's going to wear them out. So we play offense. A has the ball, drive, kick, trying to get a shot. Make or miss. B's take the ball out. You're going this way against C's on defense. Make or miss, they get the ball. They're coming right into a drive and kick. Just like I showed you the 4-on-0 drill with the handoff, they're going right into a drive and kick game. No ball screens, no post-ups, no come-togethers. They have to drive and kick the ball. So we do this, and we would keep score. First team to 3 baskets. And then C plays defense, then they go to offense. So it's really effective, and it's how we used to start the preseason to really, commit to the drive and kick, the spacing, all the things that come out of it. And it's really a good way to teach it and get the reps.
Coach, this has been some great information. I've really enjoyed this session and got a good page of notes here from this. Just thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us and be a part of this.
Well, I enjoyed it. I hope everybody, was able to take something away or stimulate some thought. That would be great. Everybody stay safe and be well.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and end this session. Get ready for Coach Morrison next.